Hi, everyone. My name is Atara McIntyre, and I'm an Arts Program Director at the New York State Council on the Arts. Welcome to our FY 2026 Support for Organizations webinar. I'm so thrilled to be with you all here today. We are immensely grateful for the recognition by our sector, as is reflected in Governor Hochul and New York State Legislature's investment of $162 million for the arts for FY 2026. This was a team effort. On behalf of NYSCA, we thank all of you for your work in reaching your legislatures and local media regarding regional arts funding. We highly encourage all applicants to read these guidelines thoroughly before reaching staff with questions and to attend our webinars and office hours. These materials can be found on the NYSCA website under the For Applicants tab. Today's webinar will be an overview of the Support for Organizations application guidelines. We will cover key topics such as pre-qualification, eligibility, key dates, and the application process. We will have a designated Q&A at the end of this presentation where you can find answers to commonly asked questions. We will also hold subsequent office hours for each opportunity where you may speak directly with program staff about your query. A reminder that this webinar will be recorded and will be shared with you all once it is live on our website. So who is this presentation for? This presentation is geared toward organizations that intend to apply for the Support for Organizations opportunity as direct applicants. To be eligible to apply directly, an organization must be one of the following types of entities: a 501c3 nonprofit corporation, or a state or federally recognized Native American nation, or a unit of local or federal government. If you are a sponsored organization, so an organization that is a nonprofit corporation, either incorporated in or authorized to do business in New York State, that is not itself recognized as a 501c3 at the time of application, or an unincorporated entity operating in New York State that is either an LLC or an LLP, which are both ineligible, a distinct program operating in New York State under a parent organization, such as a public arts entity within a university or other nonprofit organization, then we highly encourage you to watch our Support for Sponsored Organizations webinar for further information about the application process for you. What is the first step to apply for NYSCA funding? During this webinar, I will cover important information every prospective organization will need to apply for funding for FY26. So pre-qualification is the first step to determining your eligibility and is a requirement for our current grant opportunities. To get pre-qualified, you'll need to provide supporting materials such as recently audited statements and 990s. You must be pre-qualified in SFS by the application deadline to be eligible for funding from NYSCA. This step can take some time, so please start the process as soon as possible. Unfortunately, every year there are some applicants that wait to submit those documents or forget that they are needed and are then deemed ineligible. The earlier you can start the process, the better. Pre-qualification is not just for new applicants. For returning applicants, your pre-qualification status expires annually. If you're unsure when your organization's pre-qualification status expires, please check your organization's account in SFS. You can also contact our help desk at help@arts.ny.gov for inquiries about the process or to review our pre-qualification webinar available on our website. So here are some key dates. Our guidelines are available now to review. The application portal opened on May 22nd. The application portal closes on June 26th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is important to note because even if you're in the middle of your application, you will not be able to submit after 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We recommend that you give yourself enough time to review your application and supporting materials in advance of the deadline. Keep in mind that many applicants will be submitting their application at the same time on the last day, and you don't want to run the risk of encountering connectivity issues before the deadline. In addition to the eligibility requirements I mentioned earlier, all applicants must be a nonprofit organization, either incorporated in or registered to do business in New York State, Native American tribe in New York State, or unit of government in New York State municipalities, and have your principal place of business located in New York. And one helpful thing to note is that if you offer programming nationally or internationally, you'll want to make sure that you focus your narrative on your New York State programming in your narrative and in your supporting materials. At NYSCA, we have a grant award range that is capped at $49,500 for the Support for Organizations opportunity. This grant provides flexible funding and is not project-based. It's helpful to think of this grant as not being tied to a specific project, but rather providing funds to keep your organization running. The grant funds activities during the contract period of January 1st through December 31st, 2026. Awards are between $10,000 through $49,500. Grant awards cannot represent more than 50% of an organization's operating expenses in its most recently completed fiscal year. If you are awarded, you can allocate funding that you receive towards staff salaries, artist fees, and other critical components needed to keep your organization running. One other helpful thing to note is that organizations that receive multi-year funding for fiscal year 2026 do not need to reapply. So if you're unsure if you're currently on a multi-year grant, or if you're unsure if your multi-year grant extends through 2026, please be sure to look at your award letter, which will tell you how many years of multi-year you have funded. In our guidelines, you can find that we have articulated our funding priorities, which includes our commitment to underrepresented communities. Our agency embraces the widest spectrum of cultural expression and artistic pluralism and encourages funded organizations to demonstrate a holistic and comprehensive commitment to DEIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. NYSCA will prioritize funding to organizations that are within and serve historically underrepresented communities. Although every arts and cultural organization is eligible for funding, the historical underrepresented communities include those that are listed on the slide. And we'll come back to those funding priorities when we go through the application narrative. The narrative questions are divided into three categories: creativity, public service, and managerial and financial. The first section is creativity. For this section, we ask that you tell us about your organization's history, including an overview that illustrates your mission and vision. We also ask that you provide several detailed examples of past work that align with your mission and vision and best represent your organization. You can also use this narrative portion to talk a bit about projected programs or initiatives for the coming year. For this section, we really want to learn more about what you all do. So what's your mission statement, your vision statement, if you have one, and detailed examples of past work that show that clear alignment with your mission statement and that also appear well designed. So this is an opportunity to show that your work provides significant and creative contributions to the field and artistic community. We would also encourage you to use these examples detailed in your narrative when uploading supporting materials such as video or audio clips, as they can just further enhance your narrative. The second section in our narrative is public service. So going back to our slide on funding priorities, this will be your opportunity to describe the audiences you engage, where they come from, and what percentage of your audiences come from historically underrepresented communities. This section of your narrative is also an opportunity to detail how you engage local and artistic communities to broaden and cultivate your audience. Tell us how you consciously create opportunities for communities to participate. So describe how you remove barriers to participation, and describe marketing and advertising, and provide examples of successful efforts. The third and final section of the narrative portion of our application is managerial and financial. So this is your opportunity to provide information about who runs your organization. So you want to talk about staff, for example, are you volunteer run, or do you have a full-time staff and contractors? This is also where you want to talk about any financial challenges you may be experiencing within your organization, and what your organization is doing to overcome those challenges. So are artists compensated? And if so, what is the typical rate per artist in a fiscal year? For this section, you want to provide as much concise information and context as possible. And we'll also ask about the total expenses for your most recently completed fiscal year. So tips on narrative questions. So some of the most commonly asked or areas for feedback from panelists center around clarity and lack of specificity. We want to encourage you to read over your answers, not just for clarity, but to ensure you are including specific details and not generalizing. You may also want to get a second set of eyes to kind of read over your narrative answers before you submit your application. We're going to talk about the rubric in a moment, but I think what's most helpful to note is that the rubric and our guidelines are the same as the ones that are given to panelists. So as you're working on your narrative, you may want to just ask yourself, am I meeting all of these benchmarks? The next section of the application is where you upload your supporting materials. The first are 3 work samples that hopefully refer back to some of the examples that you provided in your narrative. It's great when these work samples illustrate some of the programming that you've already spoken about and provide further context. So this can be stills from an exhibition, an excerpt from a performance, or photographs of a programming event. It's important to label these work samples so the panelists have a clear understanding of what they're looking at. It's also important to keep in mind that panelists are reviewing a lot of materials. So they're going to spend no more than 10 minutes on one work sample. So if you've uploaded a material or work sample that's longer than 10 minutes, please provide timestamps. And also keep in mind that these links have to be live through December 31st, 2025, and should not be password protected. If your links are broken, unfortunately, that could impact your scores. You'll also upload a board list with information on your current board, officers, and length of service. And that we ask that you include a brief description of each board member and also identify any potential familial relationships between the staff and board. The next required supporting materials are your organization's financial documents. So they should be your organization's statement of activities for the fiscal year ending in 2024 and your approved budget for the fiscal year ending in 2025. This document should include income and expenses, and they should be in the same format for both years, be no more than 2 to 3 pages, and ideally should include budget notes that provide more context for the panelists reviewing them. So for example, if you have a huge or a large variance from year to year in one expense, you may want to just include notes in your budget explaining that variance. So you may be wondering, how is my application evaluated? In the coming slides, we will discuss the peer panel review process, the criteria used to evaluate your application, the rubric, and scoring guide. Panelists play a key role in the grant making and evaluation process. We rely on the expertise and experience of professionals in the field to review applications from across the state and provide their feedback. As such, we ensure that we have an equitable representation of panelists from all 10 regions and that they demonstrate expertise in at least one of NYSCA's evaluation criteria. We're currently seeking panelists to participate in the FY2026 grant making process. So if you'd like to nominate yourself or a colleague to serve in these virtual meetings, please visit our website at arts.ny.gov/panelists to apply. The way that panelists score each proposal is with 3 criteria. These are the criteria that are reflected in our application narrative. So each panelist gives a score for creativity, public service, and managerial financial. In this rubric, which you can also find in the application guidelines, it articulates the benchmarks that the panelists are looking for. So we also include examples such as strong responses demonstrate best practices in governance. So be sure to refer back to our rubric as you're answering the narrative to ensure you're hitting all of those benchmarks. Panelists are scoring each section on a scale of 0 to 5, with 0 being incomplete and 5 meeting or exceeding all benchmarks. So once again, this is where having someone else read through your narrative answers can be really helpful, as they may be able to assist you in determining how many of these benchmarks you're meeting and ensure your answers are concise. So these are a few frequently asked questions. This one is focused on projects and program questions. So the first question is, what should my organization do if we offer more than arts and cultural programming? So for the purposes of the NYSCA Support for Organizations opportunity, you really want to be sure that your narrative, your supporting materials, and budget focus on arts and cultural programming happening in New York State. Certainly, we want to encourage you to speak to the full breadth of arts and cultural programming that you do, and also encourage you to speak to program staff in your discipline area if you have further questions about our guidelines and application process. The next question is, what do I do if I'm not sure which panel to select? All applicants are asked to self-select which panel they would like to be reviewed under. If you're unsure which panel to select, please review our discipline descriptions that can be found on the NYSCA website. You can also find a list of past panelists under each discipline. What are the contract dates for the grant? The contract starts on January 1st, 2026 and ends on December 31st, 2026. And how do I enter personnel information in the use of funds section? For personnel information in the use of funds section, we're looking for the following: the staff person salary, how many months does the staff person work in a year, and how many hours do they work on average per week. Next questions deal with eligibility. So can I apply if I'm also applying for special opportunities? Yes, you can. Please refer to the respective guidelines for each of the special opportunities for further information about eligibility and requirements. Can I apply if I'm fiscally sponsored or part of a university? Yes, just referring back to the slides that we mentioned earlier, just refer back to the sponsored organizations guidelines and webinar regarding further eligibility requirements. Can I apply if I'm currently getting multi-year support? Once again, we want you to refer back to your award letter to determine if you're currently on a multi-year grant through 2026, or if your multi-year grant ends on December 31st, 2025. If your multi-year ends in 2025, then you would be eligible to apply for funding again for the FY2026 award year. And can I apply if I'm not part of the priority category? So yes, you are still eligible to apply. We encourage you to use your narrative to articulate who your audiences are, any barriers your organization currently faces in engaging those audiences, or reaching beyond your service area and engaging those in our funding priority list. Who should I contact with questions? For technical questions such as login issues on Smart Simple, SFS, and with pre-qualification, you can contact help@arts.ny.gov. For questions related to our current grant opportunities, contact program staff in the funding area most aligned with your organization's work. You can find the full list of staff and contact info at arts.ny.gov/contact. Please do note that we do not review written draft applications. We're available during office hours to answer any queries you may have, so please be sure to register. You can also reach out to us directly before the application deadline. So now is the beginning of webinar week. You can find a pre-recorded webinar for each opportunity posted to the NYSCA website. Office hours will begin in June. So this is a great opportunity to get one-on-one time with program staff and ask them direct questions about the application process. You will have to register for these sessions, so be on the lookout for email notifications on how to register. And outside of office hours and our webinars, you can always reach out to program staff directly to schedule a call. Please keep in mind that many organizations reach out with questions right before the deadline, and we can get a bit slammed with inquiries. So the earlier you can reach out to us, the better. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. We look forward to reviewing your proposals, and please be in touch.